In the quiet suburban streets of Millbrook, where white picket fences line perfectly manicured lawns, and where neighbors wave from their porches, darkness was hiding behind the most ordinary of facades. This is the story of Emma Rodriguez, a 16-year-old girl whose world was about to shatter in ways no child should ever experience. And it's the story of a discovery so shocking, so devastating, that it would haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. Emma had always been the light of her father's life. After losing her mother in a tragic car accident when she was just 8 years old, David Rodriguez had devoted every breath, every heartbeat, to raising his daughter. Neighbors often commented on their bond, how they'd ride bikes together every Sunday morning, how Emma would run to greet him at the door after work, her face lighting up like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. But something changed when Emma turned 16. Something dark, something unspeakable. It started with small things that David initially dismissed as typical teenage behavior. Emma would suddenly go quiet when he entered a room. Her bright, infectious laughter that once filled their home began to fade into an eerie silence. She'd find excuses to avoid family dinners, claiming homework, claiming sickness, claiming anything that would keep her away from the dinner table where they'd once shared stories and dreams. David noticed how Emma would flinch when he tried to hug her goodnight, how she'd lock her bedroom door, something she'd never done before, how she'd avoid eye contact, staring at the floor as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her fragile shoulders. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in March. David had planned a father-daughter camping trip to Lake Millbrook, the same lake where Emma had caught her first fish, where she'd learned to skip stones, where they'd made some of their most precious memories. For weeks, Emma had seemed excited about the trip. She'd helped pack the camping gear, had talked about roasting marshmallows by the fire. But when Saturday morning arrived, Emma refused to leave her room. David knocked on her door for 20 minutes, his voice growing more desperate with each plea. "Emma, sweetheart, we need to leave soon. The park closes at sunset." But behind that locked door, Emma sat on her bed, trembling, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't bring herself to spend another moment alone with the man who had once been her hero, who had become her nightmare. Days turned into weeks. Emma's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd lost 15 pounds, her clothes hanging loose on her once healthy frame. Dark circles formed under her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights haunted by memories she couldn't escape. Her grades plummeted. Her friends began to worry. Her teachers noticed the change in the girl who had once raised her hand eagerly in every class. But it was Mrs. Peterson, Emma's English teacher, who first noticed the telltale signs. The way Emma would panic when male teachers entered the room, how she'd find excuses to stay after school, delaying her inevitable return home, how she'd written increasingly dark poetry, filled with metaphors of trapped birds and broken wings. Concerned for Emma's well-being, David scheduled an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, their family physician. Dr. Chen had known Emma since she was a child, had watched her grow from a giggling toddler into a bright, confident teenager. But the girl who sat in her office that Tuesday afternoon was a shadow of the Emma she remembered. Emma sat hunched over, her arms wrapped protectively around her torso. She avoided eye contact with both her father and Dr. Chen, staring instead at a spot on the floor, as if it held the answers to all her pain. "She's been complaining of stomach pain," David explained to Dr. Chen, his voice filled with genuine concern. "She's lost weight. She's tired all the time, and she barely speaks to me anymore. I'm worried about her." Dr. Chen observed Emma carefully. In her 15 years of practice, she'd learned to read the subtle signs, the unspoken language of trauma. Emma's posture, her reluctance to make eye contact, the way she seemed to shrink into herself whenever her father spoke, these were red flags Dr. Chen had seen before. After a preliminary examination, Dr. Chen suggested running some tests. "I'd like to do an ultrasound to rule out any abdominal issues," she explained gently. Emma's eyes widened with fear, but she nodded silently. "I'd prefer to do this privately," Dr. Chen continued, glancing at David. "Sometimes teenagers are more comfortable discussing their symptoms without parents present." David reluctantly agreed, though something in his eyes flickered, a flash of concern that Dr. Chen would later remember as something darker. In the dimly lit examination room, Dr. Chen prepared the ultrasound equipment. Emma lay on the examination table, her body rigid with tension. "Try to relax," Dr. Chen whispered softly. "You're safe here." As the ultrasound probe moved across Emma's abdomen, Dr. Chen expected to find perhaps gallbladder issues or gastritis. But what appeared on the screen made her freeze in absolute horror. There, unmistakably clear on the monitor, was the image of a developing fetus. Emma was 14 weeks pregnant. But that wasn't what made Dr. Chen's blood run cold. It was what Emma whispered next, her voice barely audible above the hum of the ultrasound machine. "Please don't tell him. He can't know it's his." The room fell into a deafening silence. Dr. Chen's hands trembled as she set down the ultrasound probe. In that moment, the puzzle pieces of Emma's behavior crashed together with devastating clarity. The withdrawal from her father, the fear in her eyes, the weight loss, the sleepless nights, the locked bedroom door. Emma wasn't just a troubled teenager going through a phase. She was a victim of the most unthinkable betrayal, betrayed by the very person who was supposed to protect her. Dr. Chen immediately shifted into crisis mode. She gently took Emma's hand, her voice soft but firm. "Emma, I want you to know that you're safe now. What happened to you is not your fault. You are not alone in this." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she finally found the courage to speak the truth she'd been carrying alone for months. Through broken sobs, she revealed how her father had begun abusing her shortly after her 16th birthday. How he'd threatened her, manipulated her, convinced her that no one would believe her if she told. Following proper protocols, Dr. Chen contacted Child Protective Services and law enforcement. Emma was immediately placed in protective custody with her maternal grandmother Maria, who had been desperately worried about her granddaughter's recent behavior but had never imagined the horrific truth. The investigation that followed revealed the full extent of David's crimes. Evidence was overwhelming. Emma's testimony, medical records, and physical evidence all pointed to months of systematic abuse. David Rodriguez, the man who had once been seen as a devoted single father, was arrested and ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison. Emma's journey to healing was long and difficult. With the support of trauma counselors, her grandmother's unwavering love, and the strength she found within herself, she began to rebuild her shattered world. She gave birth to a baby girl and made the brave decision to place her for adoption with a loving family who had been waiting years for a child. 2 years later, Emma graduated high school with honors. She's now in college, studying social work, determined to help other victims find their voice and their strength. She speaks at awareness events, sharing her story to help others recognize the signs of abuse and understand that speaking up can save lives. Emma's story teaches us crucial lessons that could save lives. Warning signs of abuse: sudden behavioral changes, withdrawal from family activities, fear around specific individuals, declining academic performance, unexplained injuries, and regression to earlier behaviors are all potential indicators of abuse. The importance of trust. When children exhibit concerning behaviors, adults must look deeper than surface explanations. Emma's teenage rebellion was actually a cry for help that went unrecognized for too long. Medical professionals as lifelines. Dr. Chen's training in recognizing abuse signs made her Emma's lifeline. Healthcare providers are often the first professionals to interact with abuse victims and must be equipped to identify and respond to these situations. Speaking up saves lives. Emma's courage to finally speak the truth, despite her fear, ended her nightmare and prevented further abuse. If you suspect abuse, report it immediately to local authorities or call the National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4-A-CHILD. Healing is possible. With proper support, survivors can rebuild their lives and find purpose in their pain. Emma's transformation from victim to advocate shows that recovery, while difficult, is achievable. Subscribe now for more.